as suddenly he opened his system and began to smile very much. It seems that this class is definitely some kind of crazy. He immediately turned to his friend and said that he would never choose another, even if there were 1,000,000 of them. Once again pointing out that he would choose Lai. Thus he apologized for his behavior. Immediately afterwards, he asked how the wolf thought he could carry the archer already on his back. Absolutely no time to think. The wolf lay down on the ground, and then the team immediately ran forward for their adventures. The master was very much pleased and ordered the wolf to run forward. His happiness was boundless, because now finally he would not have to walk. It looked like the wolf was happy too, and was absolutely fine with it, as the team ran as hard as they could, leaving only dust behind them. Meanwhile, very strange things were happening in Somber Canyon. It seemed to be completely covered with fog. The archer immediately drew attention to it, saying that it was like a gloomy place, with which the wolf, of course, agreed. And here's an interesting point. He could not understand why Kylan is so realistic. So he asked his wolf. He started stroking him, and he said that his assignment was to deal with 10 goblin scouts. With absolutely no thought at all, he immediately opened his system to see what was going on. And now that Lai has become so cool, he just can't afford to stop there, saying they're about to have a lot of fun. Immediately thereafter, he activated all possible abilities in order to make the pet's agility and dexterity, and anything else possible, improve in order to win, and have a good time. After that, the wolf began to glow blue light. He was very much pumped up his skills, after which they immediately saw an army of goblins. It is worth noting that this time our archer was already capable, leaving his usual projectile at home. He immediately ordered his partner to attack them first, after which he would immediately run after him. He looked at those goblins again, and realized that with all the enhancements, the wolf's attributes couldn't be less than those of some pathetic goblins. In addition, its combat intelligence should be incomparable to ordinary monsters. After which he began to look at his wolf, which sharply ran to attack, without thinking for a second. But that's not all. Our master looked at him and remembered that in addition, now Wolf has 2 unique abilities. But there are always problems, so he immediately turned to the system in order to reach the vulnerability of opponents. It turns out that the weakness of the enemy was detected, after which another team received a plus of 91% damage when hitting the weak point. The wolf was just furious. It wanted to tear everything in its path. It began to growl. Everything around it became sharply in red glare. The goblins looked at him and were a little shocked, for they had not expected to see such a bloody wolf, and realized that he would attack them. But before they knew it, the pet had already inflicted critical damage on them. So they were shocked and lost more than 1,000 health units. But that's not all after that. The goblin scout took another 215 points of damage per second, because he was bleeding, after which he was already eliminated. This has never happened before, but it turns out that this is his new ability. After which immediately appeared a system that notified the top that the team destroyed Goblin Scout, and received for it 1,210 experience points. But our hero was just shocked by this. He could not understand how a monster of level 40 died from just one blow. At that moment, the wolf got up on its hind legs and showed that it was the king of this canyon. At this point, the goblins became very angry. They wanted to avenge their friend, and were already holding weapons in their hands, thus showing their readiness to go into battle. The archer absolutely could not expect this, and was a little shocked because the goblin suddenly hit our wolf with his mace, which he received 294 points of damage. It was very painful, as suddenly wolf and was very aggressive. Then immediately, and with all his might, he hits the goblin with his paw, and deals him another 495 damage. The system then immediately informed him that it restored him to 75% health, and gave him another 15% damage. Great. It looks like the staff is really working, and it's working as it should. And then another goblin fell in exactly the same way, and brought 75 health. It turns out the system rewards recovery in health after the enemy is defeated. Suddenly, another goblin flew into the sky, and then another goblin who survived looked at the situation and was simply stunned. He was so shocked that he simply could not even move. Suddenly, he was suddenly attacked by an angry wolf who wanted to destroy him, which is actually not surprising at all. Immediately afterwards, after a second of time, he attacked this goblin and gave him a critical hit, after which the system informed him that it restored 523 health units, and even gave him 50% damage. Our master was so shocked that he didn't even have to do anything. He just turned to his wolf to understand what was happening at all, because he absolutely did not expect this. After it was over, he immediately went up to him and thanked him for his efforts, once again apologizing as if he had said something about the other pets. Then he hugged him tightly but said it was time for round 2 and asked the wolf to get ready, which of course he was looking forward to. Immediately afterwards, when they saw the goblins, Wolf began to glow pink-blue, for the wizard had activated his hologram thanks to his staff. Immediately after that, the wolf threw himself into battle and began to fight his opponents, at a time when the wizard had absolutely nothing to do. He just activated his skills and lay on a rock, reading his book. Why not? Right after that, he logged in and saw that his friend had texted him asking if he was okay and offering to talk. After that, the moment he saw this message, he realized that, in principle, enough was enough, and called his partner to him at once, despite the fact that he still had the goblin in his teeth. And right after that, he entered into a dialogue saying that, in principle, he could talk and nothing complicated. It turns out that the guy's girlfriend texted him, saying that she was already in the game. Jin Sung was overjoyed and asked if she could help him, to which she agreed. The girl's name was Heron, and she asked for a guy to write to her. From what the archer was so happy that he could not even describe it in words. But at that moment, his friend definitely decided to ask him if he had changed his mind. After all, the girl has absolutely no ability to fight, and he was really quite amused. Who did he think he was? Immediately thereafter, he decided to calm him down by telling him to stop worrying, and that he had just cleared Summer Canyon on his own. What is that place over there where the goblin camp is? You hunt Odin? Yeah. I wiped out all the goblin scouts in the outer camps and raised 5 levels in half a day. At this point, his friend began to worry that the archer cheats or uses some bugs, because in the case of what he cannot help him if he banned. But he assured him that everything is fair, and there is absolutely no need to worry. Even a friend of his commented that, at this rate, he would quietly return to his former level soon. Jin Sung was very happy, and started smiling because he can reach level 100 in just 2 months, which he asked his friend to wait. He began to analyze that he would reach level 50 in 15 days, and level 80 in another 15 days. And then there will be 1 more month, after which he will pump up to level 100. He stood with his staff in his hands and continued to dream, for the thought that he would win the bet kept him busy. After all, when this happens, this gathering will help him a lot. So without wasting a second, he asked if the girl's name was exactly Horan, and immediately texted her, after which a little dialogue was formed between them, during which she told where it is and said she wanted to patch her equipment. After which the archer immediately asked to stay in the forge, and said he would be in 10 minutes. He made it a little early, and just 5 minutes later he was already in the village, and began to look for his forge, because he remembered that it was somewhere around here. He looked around and started smiling, his mood very cheerful and happy, because he was really doing well, especially since he saw such a beautiful girl standing slightly bent over against the wall. He immediately went up to her and said hello and told her what she had been told about him. She was very pretty, and said her name was Horan, and she had heard a lot about our archer from Gawain. Ayan immediately asked if they were friends, to which she replied that they were just close companions, biting her finger. She also said that she had finally finished her training and was ready to go into battle with him at any moment, asking if our master was ready. To which, of course, he answered yes in the affirmative. Besides, he asked if the girl had any special reason to go on this quest with the goblin camp. It turns out that, yes, there is a quest she keeps busy, but in order to take it, you need to do the quest with the camp. This is a quest from Duke Trepin's chef, but in order to perform it, you must first go to the castle. The master was a little perplexed, because he really couldn't understand why she would accept a quest from the chef, to which the girl smiled very sweetly and said that her production class is a chef. Chapter 9. But in the meantime, the master also added that he had already heard from Gawain that her class was precisely that of a cook. The girl also added that in real life, she is also a chef. The guy went on to say that he had heard from you that this was not the easiest class to take, but it must be a little easier for the girl, since she does it in real life, just the same. She, of course, agreed, said it was also more fun, which the guy was a little shocked about because she was so very pretty. Moreover, in the end, he added that her real-life skills affect how good he is at gaming classes. He couldn't stop admiring her, and said she was the first cook he had ever met anyway. He looked at her and just didn't know how to surprise her, so he asked her to cook something delicious next time, and that the girl, of course, agreed, looking at him with her sweet eyes. Immediately after that, they were greeted by a new character who said that the master finally found a member of the squad. After that, he added that 2 people might not be enough, but knowing the strength of the guy, he did not say anything and just said that he trusts his choice, greeting the girl. The main group had just left, so the boys could catch up with them if they hurried well. But he also advised them to work together, and so the boys are already looking forward to their new task, which is to conquer the goblin camp at Samora Canyon. Then the system once again informs him that Raphael, the leader of the Vigilante City, asked him to join the team of enslavement in order to help them sweep the camp goblin. In addition, while the quest continues, the team receives double experience for the destruction of goblins. And immediately the master noticed that the description of the quest did change slightly, apparently because of his lateness, but the rewards remained the same. It's good. He immediately approached his girlfriend and asked if she had received the quest, to which she replied in the affirmative. Then he waved his hand and said it was time to go on the road. Immediately after that, our hero's pet appeared in front. The girl was very surprised to see it, but the boy reassured her, telling her not to worry, because it was his pet, not a monster, and then the girl immediately guessed that he was summoning Ale, and filled in that it had only been a couple of days since the new classes. How could he already take on such a complicated quest? There was a smile on her face and astonishment. She could not admire the master exactly as well, for she was looking at him with very great admiration, to which he simply replied that he was lucky. For this wolf is not quite ordinary, and he can level up quickly, and his strength is very easily enough to overpower this bunch of bobkin. He stroked his wolf a little and blushed a little, because he knew that this excuse is very bad, because if he said that he is only level 25, she would absolutely not believe him. And the girl looked at him again and thoughtfully put her hand on his chin, saying that she was really jealous of him, because she was only level 45, and she still always runs away when she encounters goblins. To which the boy was a little surprised, as the girl believed him very easily. But he decided to calm her down a bit by saying that it probably had something to do with her crafting skills. Patamusta's crafting class isn't 100% learned yet, and it does have a lot of different variables. That's why there's no point in caring about goblin scouts at level 45 if you're a tinkerer. The girl thanked him, and already begun to get a little dark outside, and the sun was setting over the horizon. But the girl also continued her story, making a note that the wolf did look very cool. so she really couldn't even remember if she had seen anything like that before. The smile also did not leave the guy's face, and he continued to impress the girl. Said it seems that at the moment the wolf is the only one on the server. The girl was delighted and asked if he had a name. The boy kindly introduced him by saying that the wolf's name was Lai. The girl said hello to him right away and ran to pet him. She said he had a very nice name, and would he mind if she gave him some treats? Which made her smile a lot. Well, the guy said that the wolf likes to eat delicious food. Immediately after that, the girl gave him a delicious steak, which every one of us would eat right now, wouldn't we? That's why our hero was just as shocked, because he wouldn't mind eating such a steak right now either, which made him drool on his lips. Well, the wolf, do not waste precious time, immediately ate a smoked steak, thanks to which within 20 minutes he will increase his survivability by another 200 points. Our master was simply shocked. He absolutely could not understand what had happened after he had received a notification from the system. He was so happy and surprised at the same time because the characteristics of his wolf had increased immediately after her cooking. The girl said that when the cooking skills reach an advanced level, the cooked food gives an advantage. The guy was just surprised by this information, but said that the wolf's health points were just under 1400. So the added 200 would be a very significant bonus. That's why he decided that he had to make friends with her. But more importantly, he had a really good meal, and it would have been nice if he could have eaten it all by himself. Instead, he was a little offended by his wolf, because he ate all the food himself. Not giving up hope, the guy approached the girl and asked if she had anything to eat, just for him. She said she didn't have anything yet, unfortunately. But she asked him not to get upset, because she will make him something delicious after the quest, so she asked him not to be jealous. The boy was a little shocked, because he does not know how to talk to girls, especially when she still made him a promise. Meanwhile, very strange things were happening in Cupid's Canyon. Everything was almost dark now. The sun was setting over the horizon, and a bunch of people were starting to gather there. It looked like it was some kind of guild because the girl immediately informed their leader, Enslavement Hugo, that ground reinforcements had arrived. Immediately one of them fell to his knees, the literalist saying that the new faces were just such on time. Thank them for showing up, but our foreman, like a true polite man, said he was always glad to help, and was maximally glad that they were absolutely not late this time. Suddenly, he immediately looked at the other players. He absolutely did not understand what was going on. For some reason, they all looked very upset. But he did not care, because they will fight separately, only he and his new girlfriend, whom he would like to invite for coffee after the end of this quest. But in the meantime, the guild of men were looking into the distance. A fog had formed around them, and it seemed to be very scary indeed. As all of a sudden, goblins with weapons in their hands suddenly appeared and started shouting. But the Legion was determined, saying that they would exterminate all the goblins of Salmore Canyon, urging their entire army to march forward. Suddenly, the goblins also ran towards them to fight. The girl who was watching this situation was a little scared, so she asked the guy, "Is this really all normal?" But he saw her, that everything would be all right, and ordered her simply to do as he told her. The girl asked him again if she was sure of her strength, for he would be the only one to fight, to which the guy said that he really wasn't sure, and she would really come in handy for him as well, as her shield strike does not insignificant damage. But because of her fear, her shield-related skills are very well pumped. That's why he formed an interesting plan in his head, in which the girl will simply take the role of a tank, and he will follow her and deliver damage to goblins. All this and the fact that the goblin camp's her level is relatively high. Moreover, he didn't stop there and added that, in addition, her shield skills are comparable to those of level 60. This information he was very happy, and added that in other words, she will not be afraid of death, because she will be a tank. And after the girl provokes goblins, she and the wolf will immediately take all the experience. And after that, he thought to himself that she was here with him, so that he could make the best use of her. And like a true gentleman, he said that, in fact, she was just cannon fodder. But the girl looked at him sweetly once more and smiled, saying that she trusted him, although the probability of her death is absolutely not zero, to which Ian, like a true gentleman, told her to trust the wolf, not him. And because of this battle plan, he added that she would also gain a lot of experience if she didn't die. He got a little sad, as it was not because of her very good cooking. As suddenly, absolutely unexpectedly, goblins rushed into battle, to which the girl immediately activated her account in order to provoke. Everything was in the blue glare. Goblins absolutely could not approach her. And then the guy immediately asked her how long she could last like that, to which the girl replied that a full 10 minutes at least. Well, the guy said she was much better than he thought. Maybe he was too worried about someone at level 40. He looked at her one more time, at the moment one goblin had already been destroyed, then realized she was okay, and ran into battle. At this point, his wolf began to completely dominate us, even though they are much stronger than the previous ones. And now the system is already beginning to give him experience for destroying one goblin after another. He also notices that the experience is shared bio waiting for him, girl and wolf, but even so, there is a lot of it. A few minutes later, the system tells him that his level is already raised to level 26, which he is unspeakably happy about. And then a second later, he receives another notification that he is already level 27. It was really very exciting. He couldn't believe it. Meanwhile, the fighting was still going on in the canyon, when suddenly some man, very much like our master, came up behind him and asked, "Who are these guys?" At this moment, our master was destroying one goblin after another, as suddenly the girl began to say that he was very much like a user, but already high enough to be here. That's why the guy called 2 more of his friends to come over and look at it with their own eyes. Although they didn't understand what was going on, he immediately pointed them to the master and his wolf, and asked the guys what they thought about it. They said right away that it was a summoner, but that wasn't the problem. The guy added that in order to hunt here, he had to be at least level 40, while the fighting ability of this wolf looks really above level 60. And the girl also added that the Kel user was released not so long ago, so how can it be level 40 so quickly? At most it could be level 20, which of course she was a bit shocked, and said that it really is. Between them continued dialogue, during which the guy added that this is indeed true, because he had read on the forums and noticed that the strongest player was then still level 17 or 18. At this point, our wizards were destroying one goblin after another, with their wolf, showing the others their strength and greatness. At that moment, they began to wonder what kind of wolf the guy was using. At that moment, one of them wondered if it could be an artifact with summoning magic, as suddenly one of them had an idea, and said that he thought that by looking at them fight, one could conclude that they were newbies, because the guy uses his staff in hand-to-hand combat. That's why he doesn't think he has offensive spells, and he's already starting to clench his fists, as if intending to attack and destroy him. At this point, the guys on his team were very wary, for is he really suggesting that they destroy a player like him? As suddenly, one of them, I interrupt, said not to be so loud there, after which she apologized and added, "Aren't the guys too reckless?" Other than that, she said it wasn't worth it if they didn't want to get good gear from them. The penalty for such an action is quite severe. It will be very difficult indeed to regain their lost reputations. And at this point, the most important of them decided that this is their chance. So he suggested thinking again. One magical artifact summoning could bring them at least 20 million gold. That's about 7 million for each of them. And from this information, the guys were just shocked, because that's over 40 million won. They had already started to present this money. Just as suddenly, the most important one of them added that if they did it right now, I'd have to worry about their equipment too, at least until level 80. and he asked if his team really wanted to miss such an opportunity. Without waiting for their response, he continued that he had a very good plan. At this point, the wolf continued to smash goblins, covering the girl and demonstrating his power. Well, the guy in the meantime also looked that very soon he would be already level 30. After that, he went into the system and noticed that each player gets 2 class skills for every 30 levels, and he wondered what would he get. He remembered what the forums say about them being 100% random. But that's actually not true. He looked at the system again to make sure and realized that one of them would be associated with the most rolled skill, while the other would be random, which is why they are both absolutely not random. He immediately started looking at his best skill and got very excited. He discovered it in his arsenal and realized that it was an average training. This is exactly the kind of skill that increases potential. Maybe he would get one skill that would be related to potential? At this point, a goblin came at him, but he just hit him with his stick. Absolutely no distraction from his reading. Moreover, went on to say that the other one would have to be completely random, but he really wished he had something to do with farming. At this point, the situation was only beginning to heat up as the girl informed him that she only had 5% of her holy power left. It was obvious that she was already having a really hard time keeping up that kind of protection. But the boy was absolutely not distracted by his reading in the system. So he asked the wolf to help her and ordered him to protect her, which he actually ran to do. At that moment, he unleashed absolutely all the goblins that were near her, dealing them critical blows. At this point, the girl thanked him and started stroking him, since he helped her a lot. The guy was already getting a little jealous, because this hairball got along very well with the girl. But he was not so friendly with him. He had already started to cry a little, but decided that he would deal with the matter right after the quest was over. At this point, the wolf realized that something was going wrong, and there was also a lack of understanding in his gaze. As suddenly the canyon began to collapse abruptly. There was smoke from the fire near it. Even the goblins in their tents also didn't understand what was going on. Suddenly, the most important of the goblins said that humans dared to set foot on their land. That's why he was very aggressive and ordered to destroy absolutely every one of them. Immediately after that, he used his staff to do magic. Right after that, everything in the canyon became very gloomy and smoke. Some kind of horror seemed to be approaching. People began to run away in panic, asking for someone to come to their aid, as their armor was already on fire. One of them realized that it must have been the chief, looking directly in the direction he was. At this point, he ordered his guys to get ready, because this fight will only end when they destroy this goblin. In the meantime, our wizard had his allies' morale increased by 30%, which he was not fabulously happy about. Immediately afterwards, the human guard ran into battle, but the system also informed him that all stats would be increased by 10% for 20 minutes. He also ordered his wolf to start attacking, whereupon it immediately rushed into battle, snarling and tearing apart one goblin after another. He was very much in a rage and aggressive. At this moment, while the goblin chief absolutely could not believe what was happening and could not even believe his eyes, at this moment, while he was still thinking, the wolf was already rushing at him as hard as he could. At that moment, the goblin rose higher and began shouting at the wolf, saying that he was just a beast that had been raised by humans. At this point, he jumped up on him and gave him a critical hit that really knocked the goblin chief down. The system reported that his health was reduced immediately by 12 units. He was very shocked and didn't expect such a thing from the little brute. In addition, the system reported that he would take 242 damage per second due to the fact that he was bleeding. At this point, the region leader also ordered his guys to launch a joint attack immediately. At that moment, the goblin flew up and waved his staff, after which everything immediately began to collapse and a huge wave of smoke formed, because of which there was absolutely nothing visible, except only his terrible red eyes. At that moment, the goblin chief began to roar and was very angry. But the system reported at this moment that he only had 52,071 health points left, which was as much as 30% of his total stats. And at that moment, he began to growl, trying to bring down everything in his path. It looks like the battle was just beginning to develop. And it was at that moment that the goblin chieftain gained berserk status. Immediately after that, he became like a demon and was ready to destroy absolutely everything in his path. And from this, our master was also very much frightened. Besides, all the people who were near him were in a panic, as they did not understand what was happening to them so suddenly. At this point, our hero really got very tense. It was obvious that something really worried him, and a few seconds later, a very strong goblin flew into him. And then the guy flew back a few meters and got hit by another rock, which caused him to lose 684 more health units. Immediately after that, he flew back down at a tremendous speed and started sliding on the ground. After that, he immediately looked at his arm and cried. He was really in a lot of pain. The only thing he was thinking about was that he needed to heal now. At that moment, absolutely unexpectedly, a blue glow appeared in front of him, and he was surprised at the fact that he was the girl who had put a healing light on him. It was Heron who had put a healing light on him, which restored the guy 120 health units. He was very surprised and delighted at the same time, or rather in whether the girl could really create a healing light. At this moment, she was looking at him from her shield, and the boy really continued to admire her. Immediately afterwards, he smiled and looked at her. Thanking her very much, the girl continued to smile back at him. But time was very short indeed, which is why our hero ordered his wolf to go on the attack. Immediately after that, the team gathered and was ready to make the next step to stop the goblin. At this point, the wolf really started growling very strongly, and our master instructed him to take the first blow and distract the chief. But for what? But he needs to be careful. At this point, our hero decided that he would be much better to fight with his usual weapons, which is why immediately, after a few seconds, he took out his favorite bow, and the wolf ran to attack. Immediately after that, the archer loaded his arrow and was ready to throw it at the enemy. But the only thing he needed now was to find his weak spot. That's why it came in handy. And the goblin kept cheering and laughing. He wanted absolutely everyone who got in his way to die. At this point, it was clear that the goblin chief had become much more aggressive, so he couldn't be mistaken. He kept growling and using his superpowers, so there was only one chance for him to finish what he had started. That's why the wolf immediately lunged at him at the most inopportune moment, something the goblin certainly could not have expected. At that moment, the guy looked closely and realized that he had to act right away, and then he immediately fired an arrow from his bow, which began to fly straight into its addressee. Parallel to them flew all the guardsmen and warriors that could be found in this canyon. At that moment, the goblin simply stopped and spread his arms out to his sides, immediately after which, a blue flash flew into the sky. The goblin then began to laugh and cheer very hard, but that was his mistake, for the blue glare was a shot that pierced his body completely, after which the goblin fell to the ground, and the arrow pierced his head. This was the end for this goblin, who lay already unconscious and began to glow bright blue. At that moment, absolutely all of them understood what was going on and what had happened. People could not believe that he was dead. There was really astonishment on their faces. Immediately afterwards, the system was activated, which reported that the chief of the goblins was dead, and the task had been successfully completed. All the people began to rejoice very much. They were mad with happiness that they could do it. The happiness of the quest was over. And also our wizard opened his system, which reported that the chief is defeated, which means they are awarded 6,740 experience points, as they have contributed the most to these tasks. In addition, his fame will increase by 124% due to the fact that he fulfilled all the conditions of the quest. He was very happy as his level and immediately afterwards in the addressee, which allowed him to unlock special skills, which are given after reaching level 30. He immediately received another alert from the system, which informed him that 2 new skills were now available for him to use in combat. Assigned skill to familiar and spatial exchange. He was very surprised and happy because he couldn't figure out what it was. At that moment, The leader of the warriors came up to him and informed him that he had defeated the goblin chief. That was why he decided to shake his hand and thanked him for his help by saying hello to the fight. He was very happy for his team, as they had not suffered any serious losses thanks to the masters, for which he was very grateful, which is why he now owed him. Well, the boy was also very happy. He also thanked them and said that they had managed and were able to defeat the goblins so quickly thanks to the bravery of his warriors. The chief turned around and told them to be more careful the moment they returned. That's why he wished everyone good luck and raised his hand up, saying that they had now completed their mission, so now they could go home. Everyone was thrilled and very happy about it. At which point the guy went up to his wolf and thanked him for getting it over with. When everything finally quieted down, the guy sat down on the ground and decided to consider his new skills. That's why the system immediately appeared in front of him, which reported that he had one skill related to potential. As he expected, it was assigned skill to familiarity. It allowed each time this skill was used to reduce the potential of the one being summoned by 20%. In principle, it's not a particularly good skill, but here he looked at it and decided that he would give it to his wolf, since it's really much needed to test his potential. But he only had 6 potentials, and you need about 100 to evolve. This made him a little frustrated and perplexed, so he tried to figure something out. At this point, he realized that he had to pass on his skills to increase his potential, and Paul had a very serious face. He needed to help his wolf evolve as quickly as possible, but it would affect his skills. That's why he sat pondering this question as the wolf just stood next to him. Immediately after that, the system unlocked his second skill, which was called Spatial Exchange. It allows you to summon or swap with your pet, in order for me to successfully activate. Users cannot take damage during its application. Thus, the higher the level, the lower the reload speed of the skill. It's a little disappointing that he didn't get an attacking or retarding skill, but it sure comes in handy in the bayou. He was very pleased, so it was a cool skill, though not exactly what he expected. At that moment, a girl ran up to him, who was really excited and shouted in his wake. He turned around and walked over to her. She just walked closer to him and started thanking him, saying it was all thanks to him. He laughed and started waving his hands around, saying that this girl was really good, but she just put her hands down and said she couldn't have done it without him. Immediately afterwards, the team gathered in a pile, and the wolf also approached, whom the boy also asked to thank for the work he had done. The girl was very surprised when she saw the wolf fighting. After all, he was very strong indeed. She went over and started stroking him, saying that she was very grateful to him for today. She began stroking him and just hugging him. At this point, 3 heroes waited for the guy and asked for forgiveness, but our master was perplexed. He didn't understand who they were and what they were here for. The most important of them suddenly came up to them and introduced himself, saying his name was Rukin. He didn't have time to introduce himself before, so he was too busy with Questa. So he held out his hand in greeting, after which our master also said hello to him and introduced himself. At this point, Rukin offered him to join them and do a couple of quests, after which the guy really thought a lot. But his interlocutor continued, saying that they know about the hidden quest, which is a continuation of the task to conquer the goblin camp. But our master was very surprised by such a hidden continuation. Is he really talking about the task of a priest? He had absolutely no plans to perform it now because of the difficulty. But now his level is much higher. He was very careful, for he had really thought about it before. But he looked again at his companions and realized that they were at least level 50, which is why he tried to guess why they really needed him. Then he looked in their direction again and said that their levels were too different. But his eyes lit up at the fact that there is a hidden part of the quest. He was as interested as possible, but still knew that something was wrong here. So you really need more information. It turns out that, yes, this is the quest to kill the goblin priest. He is in the tunnel behind the barracks. they found him. All that is left is to destroy him. Rukin went on to say that he is much weaker than the leader, but only worries that the enemy will be beyond their reach. At this point, he also informed us that our hero has a powerful artifact of summoning. If he joins them, they will surely succeed. But our boy was puzzled. He didn't understand a bit what exactly they meant by the word artifact. He smiled and realized that these guys had decided that he was using artifact, but they are really very expensive, so they wanted to kill him in order to make a fortune. He understood everything and started smiling very much, having figured out their plan. Immediately afterwards, he turned in their direction and said that he understood everything and would help them. After that, the team rejoiced that he was already in their trap. But the guy was also smiling, saying he could have fun with these dumbasses. At this point in the canyon, the sun had already begun to set over the horizon, and the smoke from previous battles continued to billow everywhere. The guy immediately turned to the girl in order to talk to her uninvolved. She immediately wondered why the guy was texting her when they were standing next to each other. But the guy wanted to clarify one thing, so he asked her to wait. He immediately turned to the three newcomers, saying that he really liked their proposal, but that he needed to ask his partner first. So he asked them to give him some time, to which, of course, they agreed. Immediately thereafter, he turned to Heron, asking if she had heard anything about Rukin's offer, and what she thought about it. She immediately scratched her head and thought about the answer. So the guy texted her, letting her know that they wanted their PK right away. The girl was surprised and asked, "What?" But Ian explained that it looked like they were planning to kill them the moment they did the High Priest quest. There was anger on his face, so he also added that they would rather try to kill him than both of them. The girl also tensed up and asked what they should do then. He ordered her to agree right now with him, which made Haran surprised. But after she looked at him, she immediately agreed. "Sure. There's no reason to reject the offer since you will share the hidden quest with us." At this point, their enemies immediately smiled and were extremely happy about it, and the main one of them just realized that they were the real fools. Ian looked at the girl, who was a little scared, but trusted him. So she immediately asked him what their plan would be, but the master asked her not to worry, for he already had something in mind, namely, to capture all these fools all at once. But they just stood there and didn't suspect anything. They were just very happy that the foreman had paid attention to them, and now they would calmly cheat him and take all the money. At this moment, there was another man sitting on the mountain, who seemed to be enjoying his life very much, for he was very much enjoying even the fresh air of Kylan, because it is always so refreshing. He really couldn't believe it was virtual reality, and the scientists who did it all were really impressive. But he looked older than all those young guys. He kept looking off into the distance and added that his job was to convince the hiking club members to host their next month's meeting here in Kylan. He reached into his backpack and pulled out something that looked a lot like a roll and started to cheer like a child. After tasting it, he realized that it's not a hike without a delicious kimbap. Indeed, he really had already forgotten, so he immediately remembered why he was here and activated the call of the wolf, which 30 seconds later already appeared immediately beside him. He was very happy to see his master and began to lick him and bark. He always does this after he is called. He immediately pulled out a piece of big meat and offered it to him, saying it was just for him. The wolf then began to eat it near his master, while he enjoyed the view and the atmosphere, for it is indeed very relaxing. But he was a little wary, because there would have to be a game here right now anyway, wouldn't there? He immediately remembered that same conversation with a guy named Park Jin-sung, with whom they had argued earlier. He wondered, maybe he should ask him for his job? Because there is no way he's a summoner, right? At this point, things continued to get interesting down the canyon. Everything was glowing, the fight was in full swing. The new team of people were fighting the goblins, and the girl and the guy kept chatting, helping each other in the fight like a real team. After it was apparent that the completion of the quest was near, the chief of them became alert, and realized that the hidden boss, the Goblin High Priest, would appear soon, so shall he get ready for their real plan? It was that when these two worry about the goblin, they will pretend like they're engaged, and at the end they'll attack these two fools and get everything for themselves. In words, it was very simple. They continued to rejoice and already imagined their victory. The main one realized that he would soon be holding an artifact worth millions of gold in his hands. At this point, he was admonished not to laugh so hard. Couldn't he just do a poker face? The guy turned to the girl, saying that the monster was coming soon, so she asked what they should do now. The guy pointed to a place that actually looks like a prison, and if anyone tries to take a step in there, the boss will appear within 5 seconds. After that, the entrance will be closed by steel bars. They will follow the group, and after that he will give the girl the signal to jump back quickly. Okay? At this point, he also ordered his wolf lay to attack, whereupon he immediately pounced on a pack of goblins. The guy turned to the man in charge and said, would they mind if they went up to the entrance? To which he immediately agreed, though he was a little nervous. He turned around and started laughing, realizing that this idiot really doesn't have a clue. He won't be able to escape without his familiar, so everything is going as planned. Ian also wondered what this serpent was thinking right now, but he remained calm and was very happy. Suddenly, he looked again at the prison they were to run to. Then they were stopped by the high priest and 2 berserks who would appear over there. Now, let us all move in. The master smiled and agreed with him, but said to let Ray lead them then. At this point, the wolf kept walking and the countdown began. 5, 4. Jin Sung kept counting the numbers to himself. 3, 2. And when everything was already close to number 1, he immediately began to shout that right now we need to act. After which he immediately took the girl by the hand and began to run with her as hard as he could towards the exit, which she certainly could not have expected so quickly. Everything around them began to smoke, and white smoke covered their entire area, and that was it. Ray and his team were trapped, something he himself could not have expected. He immediately walked over to the metal beams and began to hold on to them, asking what happened. Why didn't they go with them? And what were they even doing? But the guy just kept smiling and didn't hold back his emotions. He was very happy and decided to clarify if he really didn't understand why he did it, or was he just pretending. So he decided to remind him once again that they tried to kill them and steal his Summoner's artifact, which made him wary and really scared. He didn't understand what was going on, and how did he figure it out? So he looked again at the prisoners in the cage and said he had no more reason to play behind their plan. So he wished them luck and told those 3 to have a good time there. They were scared and trying to get out. Rai yelled that he was an idiot and didn't understand anything, because he wouldn't have a way out either. Because the conditions of the quest are that you cannot go back into the world until the boss monster is killed, or all party members are wiped out. Truthfully, we can take care of the high priest all by ourselves. He also added that after we slay the high priest and these bars lift, it will be your funeral. It won't take long. But with that threat, the guy just laughed and thanked them for the warning. Right after that, he ordered his wolf to attack his opponents, which he immediately did. A second later, Lei inflicted critical damage to Millen and his health has decreased by 1,077. 32% of total health. They were surprised at what the wolf was doing here, and very scared. And at that moment, the system reported that Millen was infected and would bleed, taking 215 damage every 10 seconds. At this point, Rai was very aggressive. He didn't understand what this dog was doing here. After enough damage was given to the opponents, Jin Sung simply decided to summon his pet back, so that no one would damage him as well. Rai was frightened after that, and refused to believe what was happening right now behind his back, where the goblins were already standing in line and waiting for the fight to begin. He looked at them, and fear completely pierced his eyes. He had absolutely never experienced such emotions before. At this point, the goblins began to approach him very quickly, along with their king. But this time, they were very aggressive, and much larger in size than the ones before. Ray once again turned to the guy and was very angry. He once again decided to talk to him, asking does he really think they can beat the boss? As soon as they got out, he would die. Jin Sung just threw up his hands and laughed a lot. He was very funny, so he sat down on the ground and said, let them win. He'd love to wait for him. At that moment, Ray tried again to open the cage, but he failed, which made him very angry. The monsters were already standing practically behind him. After that, the system also turned on and reported that the boss had appeared. The goblins were armed and looked much stronger and taller than the previous ones, and everything around the boss continued to smoke. Ray ordered his team to focus on the boss first, and then, after that, they would destroy the guy, to which the team agreed because they had no choice. And Millen was just barely even on his knees anymore. It was obvious that the wolf's blow had really hit him hard. Ray took his shield and once again reminded the guy that he was coming for him very soon. But he didn't care. He kept laughing. Also added, has any third-rate villain actually succeeded after saying that line? The girl also started to get a little worried and asked the guy if everything was really going to be okay. But he kept laughing, saying he could help if he was worried, which also made her very surprised. At this point, the fight began, and Rai was the first to rush into the fight, who wanted to get it over with as quickly as possible. Immediately, the goblins clashed with their axes and went on the attack. The girl also threw herself into the fight and began to defend herself against the goblin, who was noticeably taller and stronger than her. Suddenly, completely out of the blue, Rai is hit with a very hard axe, which he could not have expected. He got very angry and started screaming, immediately throwing himself back at the goblin as hard as he could, wounding him very badly indeed. But suddenly, a boss activated from behind and used his powers to heal the goblins and give them even more power. At this point, they realized that the first thing they needed to do was to kill the priest before he cast the spell, to which Millen said to leave that job to him, and immediately threw a spear at him with enormous force, which flew seemingly precisely on target. And lo and behold, it did fly near the goblin, but he was able to repel it. After that I realized it was an item from that bag. Barbarian's Blessing. The system also informed him that the Warrior Barbarian Blessing had now been activated, after which the goblins gained even more strength and power, because their minimum attack power had already been increased by 35%. At this point, Harin decided to switch on as well, and activated more of her superpowers, activating the Blessing of the Wind as well. She started to shine and was very happy, but Ray and her team absolutely could not believe it. Was she really that crazy? You buffed the monsters? The system also activated and reported that the activation of the wind powers was successful, and the Goblin Berserker's dexterity was increased by 42%. The girl turned to the guy and asked if that was enough, to which he simply asked if she could also fix them. After which, the girl immediately had a smile in her eyes and said, "Why not?" And she started doing it right away. At this point, the opposing team was already begging them not to do it. They just cried and after a few seconds just raised the white flag of despair, announcing that they were giving up and failing their quest. In the meantime, it was already dark enough outside, and the girl and her boyfriend decided to take a walk together through the night city along with her wolf. The guy looked at his spreadsheet and added that this bunch of losers had a lot of good stuff, so he called the girl to go with him to the auction house to sell the items he received. The girl was embarrassed and decided to thank the guy, because thanks to him, she passed this quest and received a great reward. And he, like a real gentleman, said that she really deserved it. But he also didn't think they could get the High Priest necklace, which is really very expensive. He looked at it again and said it was a little unfortunate that they would have to split the proceeds. But he also had quite a few other items, so that was okay. He remembered how the girl had supported him and was a little embarrassed, because he didn't even expect her to like it that much. But it seemed to be worth it. He stroked her feet and told her they had to hurry. After which the girl proceeded to ride the wolf again, and the guy clarified that they were now straining to get to the auction house. And so, they are already near him, after which the guy immediately gave the buyer his gold, which they honestly earned. He looked into the system and was very happy because indeed, they were all sold at a high price, and the guys earned 660,000 gold at once for it. All that money had already been earned clean, after deducting the auction house commission. Now that he thinks about it, he picked up a rock and became very curious as to what it was. Why did a group of opponents drop them? He wanted to figure it out, because it was really warm. Did it seem designed to be used as a hot compress in the winter? A description of the items is useless here. He just kept tossing it around and realized he really didn't want to throw it away. At this point, the girl turned to him, saying she had finally finished buying the ingredients and smiling sweetly. So the guy called her out and said that in that case they should go and complete the quest. It was still dark outside, and the lights were on in the houses. The team approached their NPC comrade, who was already waiting for them, and was very happy to see them. Immediately thereafter, he completed their quest, and for making the greatest contribution to it, the team received an SS grade. The system also rewarded them with 56,700 gold, and gave them another 1,743,200 experience points. Thanks to this, the guy's level rose from level 31 to 34 at once. He was really excited because it's a really great experience, and they also gave a lot of gold, which is really very cool. The girl also turned to him and told him that she had also reached level 46, for which he also congratulated her. At this point, Jin Sung approached the NPC and informed him that, by the way, Commander, he met the High Priest Goblin behind the barracks and showed him his necklace. He was immediately surprised and asked, did they really defeat the Goblin Priest? This is really unbelievable. So the system activated again and informed them that they had completed another quest and gained another 674,000 experience points. After which the guy's level also increased. He was very happy about this outcome. But the NPC was very surprised by this, because the vigilante team had been tracking him for a month. How did they find him? But the guy just replied that he was really lucky. But he was stopped and told that it couldn't be simple luck, which really made him tense up a bit. But the NPC handed him a Savoy and told him that the guy was really entitled to it. After he took it, his whole face began to shine. He couldn't believe it. He turned it around even more, and everything around him turned red. And the guy himself seemed to start getting unimaginable power that absolutely no one had ever had before. This is something that will completely overturn your idea of what a real taming master should be. Our story doesn't end there. It just continues. So be sure to subscribe and like the channel so you don't miss out. And it would be fun to see your impressions in the comments.